just thank you for being here. This is the Evidence Show, and we're here to talk about evidence. So that's what we're going to do. And I will again direct your attention to the same three things that we always start with. One, even though I only use Facebook for marketplace and for buying fishing things and tools, a lot of other people use Facebook as a community. And we've tried to establish a community on Facebook for evidence custodians specifically. And we've got over 1,000 people that are signed up on that forum right now. So if you're not a member of the forum, please sign up. And if you're selling fly tying equipment, put that on Facebook Marketplace. So we encourage you to use both of those platforms. But we're in the business of building community and trying to bring people together, and especially people that are working with the same issues in different parts of the country. It just makes a ton of sense to provide some places where you can have those conversations and get questions answered that are not readily available for most of us. A lot of us do our jobs in isolation, and that isolation keeps us, uh, it prevents us from finding solutions that are out there. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. Again, I will point your attention to Tracker Products. I would encourage you to check them out. They make evidence software. And what we do here is possible because of what they do there. We've had an industry partnership with them since the very beginning. They've underwritten and kept the lights on and kept me fed after retirement from law enforcement. So I'm appreciative of what they do and of their support of what I do for the past few years. Would encourage you to check them out at trackerproducts.com. And similarly, our newest kind of partner is Gunbusters. You got guns, they can destroy them. And love what they do. We had them on last episode. If you want to learn more about gun destruction, check Gunbusters out. Their corporate office is out of St. Louis, Missouri, but they will take care of you anywhere you are throughout the country. And if you're curious, want to learn more about gun destruction and a little bit about what Gunbusters can do for you, check them out at gunbustersusa.com or check out our last episode. We put it online. It should be there somewhere. And last shameless plug is my website, evidencemanagement.com. If you're curious about anything we talk about today, you can go find it on evidencemanagement.com. We put all of our resources out there. There's free training classes that are available to you online that you can complete entirely online. Again, someday we're going to reshoot those, uh, just not today, a different day, because we got other things to do now that we can go freely throughout the country and talk about evidence. We're going to do that instead for a little while. But today I'm excited. I mean, this one of the things I love about what I get to do is I get to get out and I get to meet people and I get to see things that can make a difference. And I am fully committed to changing the culture of evidence management and changing the game when it comes to how we esteem evidence custody and how we what do we do with it? Like how do we store it? All these things can be impacted, and there's stuff out there. There are resources out there, but sometimes we're not connected to those resources or we're unaware of those resources. And it's not like we're living in a cave, although sometimes we office in what feels like a cave. You're just not aware of the things out there that can really change your world. And as much as we possibly can, that's what we're about. So our talk today is 360-degree game changers, and we're going to talk about leveraging technology that exists to build an absolutely unassailable chain of custody. So we'll talk about that. That's the main topic. That's what Jim is here for, and he can wave again. And I probably should incorporate people earlier in, but we just got a lot of stuff to say, so we'll try to get through that first. Speaking of stuff to say, here are the things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about something really cool first, and actually two really cool things. So it's bonus content, two really cool things. We're going to do some announcements about our travel schedule and our conference schedule and where we're going to be throughout the country and what we're going to be doing. I'm going to build a real quick case and revisit the concept of what we teach as a 360-degree chain of custody. If you've been to one of our classes or seen something on one of these evidence show episodes. You're probably already familiar with it. But even though I think it's brilliant because I made it, so that doesn't we should probably stop. Just cut. All right, we'll come back to that. But I think it's a great concept, but there were problems with it. There was an issue in executing. How are we going to execute this 360-degree chain of custody? That's one of the reasons why I was so excited to meet Jim at the PEEF conference in Florida, which was amazing and fun, not just because it's on a beach, but because it's also a great conference. The beach does not help or hurt at all. So, but met Jim and saw what they do, and I was like, this is something we've got to talk about like next month. You got time on a Thursday, Jim? And Jim said yes. So we said, all right, let's do that. And then we will talk about Sonicu a little bit. So I'm really kind of burying the lead here, but let's talk about something cool. Last month we were in Indiana, home of my sister and her kids, and Davis. They don't watch this because they don't do what we do, but he just graduated from South Bend something something big school. Was grad. Yeah, I'm really rabbit trailing here today, so I apologize. I'm gonna dial it back in. Anyways, I was in Indiana, and we were in Fort Wayne, and we were talking with the folks at Fort Wayne, and we invited people to get together and brought everybody in a room. There were folks from like Elkhart, and I'm really bad at geography, but Fort Wayne. Uh, there was enough people there, both present and online, and they decided, you know what, we're going to form an association here in the state of Indiana for evidence custodians. And we here at the Evidence Management Institute, we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. One of the things that I think we can do, if you're from Indiana and you're interested and you don't know about it, reach out to us and we'll put you in contact with Christina, who was going to be the president of the Hoosier Association for Property and Evidence, HAPE. Uh, you will notice a pattern throughout all property and evidence associations in the country, or at least 90% of them, with maybe the exception of PEEF, is there's some kind of ape in the mix. And the Hoosier Association is no different, and they're going to be a cool resource for people. They are actively in the business of forming. We're going to help them get formed. We're going to help them get established as a 501c3 so that there will be a resource for Hoosiers who are working in evidence management. We're gonna see that come to fruition. Really excited about what they're doing. It ain't us, it's them. They're gonna do the heavy lifting. We're just gonna clear the path. So that's really cool. Another cool thing coming down the pike, we're going to go out to St. Louis and work with Gunbusters on what we think is going to be a fairly game changing resource that we will offer for free to people that look up our website. We're going to do a free handling and identification training for civilian evidence custodians, and that should be online. I would imagine the fall. I'm about to get that scheduled, and we'll figure out how to put that in the can. Uh, that's going to be cool because it doesn't exist. And honestly, that's just what we're about. We're trying to create resources and connect people and pay the bills. And if we can do all those things, change the culture while we're at it, I think we're off to the right start. So, uh, our world tour, which is really just where we're going to be. It sounds cooler to call it a world tour, but it's the world of the United States. We're going to be at the NIPIT conference in New Mexico in September. We're actually going to be doing a 2-day certification training with them in conjunction with that conference. So we're excited about that. That'll be in Albuquerque in September. If you're in New Mexico, look them up, sign up for the conference. We will be there. We'll be hanging out at the MAPE conference, the Missouri Association for Property and Evidence. And that is an organization that we kind of helped with as well, get formed a few years ago. And they're up and running and doing awesome. So if you're in Missouri, any part of the state in Missouri, we would encourage you to look up MAPE, join them immediately, and then say, hey, I want to go to the conference, and we'll meet you there. And then later in the fall, we're going to be at the OAPEA conference in Oregon, and we'll be doing a little bit different thing there. We're going to present a lot of different training topics. Excited about that. I love going to Oregon. Uh, so we'll be there in November. And our live 2-day training classes that we've got on the books. We'll be in Greeley here in a couple weeks, July 18th and 19th. So come out and see us, and Tracker and Gunbusters will be there, and we'll be in Lawrenceville, Georgia, which is near Atlanta, September 6th and 7th. And then we're going to be going to Miami or Doral, Florida, September 13th and 14th. So if you're in Colorado or Georgia or Florida and sometime in the fall, and Darcy, if you're on, I apologize. I meant to email you. Uh, we got to figure out a date to come back to Oregon uh, while the trout are still kind of running. So that'll be the main restriction there. But we'll be in Greeley, Georgia, at Florida. We've got those dates on the schedule. You can go to our website and sign up for one of those classes. We'd love to see you there. Again, that training is no cost to our participants, no cost to the agency, but no cost to you doesn't mean no cost to us. Tracker Products and Gunbusters underwrite those training classes, and they will be there to talk to you about their stuff. It'll be cool. You'll learn something. You get a certification if you want it, and it's a no lose proposition. So really quickly, uh, I want to talk about chain of custody, and I know it's not the most riveting subject in the world. The old chain of custody that you see on a paper form or printed out, the record of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Um, and the reason I want to talk about it is because I think we could all kind of universally agree that what we've thought about as chain of custody is not sufficient. A chain of custody record is not sufficient to protect or to verify the actual chain of custody of the evidence item that you're storing. And I'm not going to go over the entire definition of chain of custody, but basically, this is the item that we say it is. It's the actual item. Nobody's messed with it. That's chain of custody. And what you see in most chain of custody documents does a great job of telling you the chain, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. But one of the things that I've seen just over and over and over again is it does a great job of capturing the chain, but it tells you nothing about the custody of that evidence, the environment that it was stored in, or the conditions that it was stored in. And that's become increasingly important in law enforcement, especially with kind of the rise of the importance of biological evidence and finally getting some standards from NIST in 2012, 2013 about handling biological evidence that answered a lot of questions for a lot of us, put things in stone. Well, now that we know, we got to do better. And we really haven't caught up. So the failure point for chain of custody happens in really four areas. The security under which the evidence is stored. The security conditions are huge. But we usually don't document the security environment, the storage environment, the temperature and humidity that the evidence is stored in. There are 100 different environmental factors that matter either for the evidence or for the people working around the evidence that simply don't get recorded. It doesn't happen. There's no record of that traditionally. The facility conditions that the evidence is stored in, that just nobody knows. And then accountability practices like inspections and audits and inventories. So that's where chain of custody fails because without these four factors, we can know the chain, but we don't know nothing about the custody. And really and truly, this is the absolute failure point of where chain of custody can break down. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it 100 more. We've been lucky in law enforcement. We've not been good. And it's time for us to be good at what we do when it comes to storing evidence and documenting the storage of evidence. And a better, more evolved view of chain of custody will help. So let me show you a couple of fun slides. And here is the question. It's not a quiz. You don't have to answer. But is it possible to have a pristine chain of custody document and also have an outbreak of mold in your evidence vault at the same time? Yeah, it is. You can have a vault that is overrun with mold, and that chain of custody document ain't going to look any different than it did the day before. You can have a water leak in your evidence vault and have thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence ruined uh, and you'll have no real reference to that event on your evidence documentation. That's why the custody environment, the storage conditions, the facility conditions, those are important factors. They just don't get documented. In law enforcement, if it doesn't get documented, it never happened. And if it's never measured, then we just don't know. We don't know if we don't measure things. You don't know what the size of the problem is or whether there's a problem or not, but we know that there are factors and conditions that have been set and predetermined for us for storing evidence. Temperature controlled means something specific. It means 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, a relative humidity lower than 60%. All of those are measurable and all of those are important. We know what refrigerated means with respect to temperature and humidity. We know what frozen means now with respect to temperature and humidity. But if we don't measure those things and document those things, then the record of those things fails to exist. And it never happened. It doesn't matter if it's not documented, and it doesn't matter if it's not measured. It's the rough equivalent of I don't know, and that's just not a good testimony in court. I don't know. That's just no judge really wants to hear that. No jury wants to hear that. And these slides, I mean, they're just bad. So we're not even going to spend much time about them. But here's my point to all this, that chain of custody, the way we currently do it, is the soft underbelly of the justice system. If we're going to be attacked somewhere, if one of your criminal cases is going to be attacked somewhere, the soft underbelly for that attack to occur is with chain of custody. That's the easiest place to strike. Not the value of the evidence, not the analysis of the evidence, but how that evidence was stored, who had access to that evidence, the record of it, of storage conditions. That's the place where people can go. And if we don't document that stuff, that's on us. We own that liability. So it's time for us to address the problem and start looking for solutions. And that's why we came up with that concept of the 360-degree chain of custody. Um, it's evolving the concept of chain of custody to meet the needs of the justice system. And that's an easy thing to say, but it means something very different. It is traditional chain of custody documentation. That is what it is. But it's also incorporating other documentation and other measurements into your chain of custody to where you tell the full picture of that piece of evidence from cradle to grave, and you account for not just the chain, but the custody of that evidence while it's in storage. And that, for me, seemed like a really good idea. And it was. But documenting and measuring that custody environment is not as simple as it may seem. So that 360-degree chain of custody, that involves traditional documentation, packaging of the evidence, accountability processes like audits, inventories, and inspections. But the tough part is right here. And I'm going to point to the screen, even though your screen is probably somewhere other than where I'm pointing. It's security and storage environment. And this is a really long introduction for what we're really here to talk about today is how do we account for the storage environment that evidence is kept in. That's a tough one. My only recommendation for the past 2 years when we've been teaching this 360-degree concept is you got to just manually do it. You got to have measurement devices. You got to during your inspection process go through and write down, document the temperature in the vault, write down the humidity levels in your vault, check your cold storage devices manually with thermometers that you dump in there and write that down. There was no really systematic wholesale way to build an accurate portrait of storage conditions because honestly I didn't know that the technology existed until one day I went to the beach in Daytona, Florida, Daytona Beach, and I found someone that could solve the problem. Uh, Jim, this Jim,
Yeah.
uh, Jim and Sonicu were at the PEEF conference in Florida. And when I walked by his booth, I thought, man, that's something that everybody needs. This is important. This can be a game changer. And he will tell you more about Sonicu, and I'll kind of give him carte blanche and free range to talk about his product, because I really think that this is something that people need to know about. And I didn't know about it until a month ago, and to me, it's a game changer. So rather than hearing the old bearded homeless guy talk to you, let's meet Jim. So Jim, hello, say hello to everybody.
Hi guys. Hi everybody. And thanks for the great introduction there, Sean. Um, yeah, I'd love to, my first podcast here, so bear with me, folks. But yeah, I'd like to tell you a little bit high level who Sonicu is, what we do, and how we ended up, at the PEEP conference. Um, on the something cool section, he talked a lot about our home state. We're Hoosiers as well. Sonicu is based out of Greenfield, Indiana, which is just outside of Indianapolis. And we actually started as a sound monitoring company 15 years ago. So the original founder of Sonicu had a son in the NICU and talking to doctors and learned about the adverse effects of noise or sound on preemie babies. And so he invented a way to monitor sound levels. And so sound in the NICU is where Sonicu came from. We're still in NICUs throughout the country, these little meters that turn yellow and red if the people are being too loud in the hallways and so on. But that developed over the last 15 years or so into a full cloud-based environmental monitoring system. So Sean touched on a lot of these temperatures for fridges and freezers and ULT, ambient temp and humidity, room conditions. We can do water leak detection. We can tell you if a door was left open, that sort of thing. So historically, we have been in healthcare and research labs throughout the country. So we do have customers in all 50 states, some fantastic labs that I could name drop on, but that has been historically our primary space. So the reason I think I point that out is that our system, there's a lot of similarities. A lot of people in the past had been manually logging these things, and the type of assets they were protecting, 10 years of autism research. They needed something better to where it was fully redundant. We have a lot of, failover built into our platform, and we allow them to remotely from anywhere receive alarms and alerts in various methods of, phone call, text, email, push notifications on an app if something's out of range, and make sure that they're not losing, highly valuable research. And the other side of that then is is the reporting. So instead of manually logging all of this, you can, you talk about chain of custody, 360 chain of custody, and these are the things, as I started talking to Sean at PEEF, that we just said, holy cow, you can go back in time with a cloud-based platform like this. And if you had a piece of evidence that was, maybe being questioned, you could say, no, I can tell you exactly the temperature range it was stored in, and 2 years ago during this time period. And so we ended up at PEEF, and this is kind of an aha moment for our company. We started receiving inbound calls and a few online web submissions from, county sheriff's departments. And it started in Florida and a few in Texas. And so we looked into that, and we said, wow, this makes a ton of sense that they would need our product. It's not a space we've historically been in. And so I went down to PEEF, and that's where I met Sean. So that's sort of how we got to this point. And I had an idea of why this makes sense for evidence monitoring. And then, having longer conversations with Sean, it makes even more sense to me. So yeah, I hope it does to you all as well. And kind of pause there if there are any questions. Or Sean, I guess you want the questions in the chat, but I can maybe give you a high level overview of technically how it works.
Yeah.
And this is something, once we started diving in, that we said, okay, so all of our customers in healthcare, life sciences, they're accreditation bodies, right? So whether it's Joint Commission in a hospital or FDA, CDC, CLIA and colon cap for labs, we said there has to be some sort of accrediting agency for evidence. And what we've learned, and Sean's helped me navigate this somewhat as well, is while there's not necessarily a body that oversees it that's going to come and penalize you for being out of compliance, there are best practices, and they match very closely to a research lab. It needs to be stored at these temperatures. It needs to be handled this way. You need proof of that. Your humidity needs to be within certain conditions so things don't get destroyed. And so we started digging into that a little bit as well, and coming up with where we feel we can have an impact on those best practices.
Yeah, let me forward. And if you've been around the block a few times, you know where this information comes from. I mean, this is straight out of the NIST Biological Evidence Handlers Handbook. Uh, i- it's important to us. It's important to them. And I think once we realize, or once they realize, hey, this is a thing. The evidence needs to be stored in certain conditions. Monitoring those conditions makes sense. So they are aware of and understand the storage environment for evidence. And to me, it just makes a lot of sense for all of us to have this kind of technology on board. I'll let him kind of explain a little bit more to you. Um, but I should let you talk. You came all the way from Indiana over the internet to this place.
Yeah,
So
it was a long trip across the internet. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Sean. Um, but you're exactly right. It's in all of our, to point that out, you mentioned the NIST handbook. All of our sensors for accuracy are NIST calibrated prior to shipping. And then we have a program in place where we can make sure that they're up to NIST standards. And that's, one of those things going back to the nature of our existing customer base, that where it's very stringent, very stringent. You can't say that it's this temperature. It has to be calibrated to a specific degree of accuracy. So we have, from a hardware perspective, we have various kits. We have little meters that reside locally and that get the data to the cloud. And I think there's a slide in here somewhere about the various topologies, but we have multiple ways of doing that. We can connect via Wi-Fi. We can do direct cellular. So that a lot of times will be mobile unit type of scenarios. Uh, we can connect via our Sonolink hubs, which is it's LoRaWAN, and that's this slide here. Thanks, Sean. LoRaWAN is the technology. It's a long range, low frequency radio signal that stays, if you're in an area that doesn't have strong Wi-Fi, that will connect to Ethernet at the edge, and the meters connect to the hub, and up to 500 meters can connect to a single hub. The range on them is, can be half a mile open air. So, and then what you're able to do as well, and this comes into play in areas of the country with, severe weather conditions at times, is you can add, cellular failover to that as well. So that what you're able to do then, if power goes out, the internet goes out, we can fail over, and you can still remotely from home monitor the temperature, humidity, and so on of the assets, and make a determination as to, at what point do we need to go in and move things around. So not to get too far down the rabbit hole on that, but just know that there are multiple levels of redundancy, multiple ways of us to get the data to the cloud. It's all hosted on enterprise AWS. So one of the sort of 800-pound gorillas for cloud-based hosting, and then you can access that data from anywhere. So anywhere you have an internet connection, pull out a laptop, you can see the live temperature readings, everything of your units or your rooms. We do have an app for iOS and Android, a free app. So been a bit of a game changer for some people. They, I've had lab directors tell me they get an alert and they don't have to open up their laptop or get out of bed if it's in the middle of the night. They can grab their phone, they get the notification, and they can log in and see what's going on. And if it goes back into range, they're fine. Can go back to bed. There are ways to set up users and groups and escalation paths and that sort of thing as well. It's all customizable. But from a high level, once again, the main two points are protecting assets and eliminating manual logging processes. that chain of custody, that 360 chain of custody, the proof and the data that, you know, you've been, yeah, that's a good screen there. That's one example of a myriad of reports that we have in our system where you can pull, you know, temperature logs from any time period that you need to, because it's cloud based. It's constantly checking in, you know, and just essentially pinging. You know, our sensors are pinging the temperature and the humidity and what have you. And then, you know, things like water ropes where, um, you know, if there's a water leak, you'll be alerted immediately. We've had a situation recently in a hospital where it was an IT director at I think he's actually a C-level person in IT, and he was told, "Hey, listen, you don't need to know anything about the Sonicu platform. Just know that if you get an alarm, it means somebody else ignored it. Multiple people ignored it." And it happened, and it's always on a weekend, right? And it was on a weekend, and he received an alert, and he logged into the app and looked at it, and he said, "That's coming from," you know, looked at the floor plan, so that's the third floor of this hospital, and it looks like it's a server closet. Set facilities down there, and one of our water ropes had detected a slow water leak in their server room, and they're going to be kind enough to put together a case study with us because it saved them who knows how much money if their entire server closet goes down. So it's that kind of stuff that, you know, that we're protecting and making sure that you're not going to lose it. And, you know, and once again, talking to Sean and then letting your imagination run wild and putting yourself in the shoes of a family who watches someone walk for a horrific crime because the evidence got lost or a freezer went bad. And we've seen horror stories at Sonicu where we received calls. I mentioned autism research earlier. That's because it always sticks in my brain that we did receive a call at one point from a lab that lost 10 years of brain samples for autism research. I mean, they, irreplaceable. So if it's irreplaceable and you can't afford to lose it, that's where you would reach out to a company like ours.
Yeah. And to me, this is this right here is kind of the game changing aspect and game changing element to have true understanding and it's one thing to go through and mark down the temperature, but to have it monitored 24/7 and to be alerted. Like I've got a buddy, and he ran a huge evidence vault on the eastern seaboard, and they had a water leak, and they didn't know about it for days. If they'd had a monitor in that evidence storage facility where, and it was one of those long-term places where nobody ever really went, well, it stayed unattended for weeks and months, and it ruined thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence. And had they had technology like that and been responsive to it, this wouldn't have happened. But it's this piece right here, the reporting. You know, it's not like you're going to have to start creating reports of storage conditions from cradle to grave every time you go to court. The peace of mind here and really the value is if you had to, you could do it. And once people know that you can do it and that you've established a record and a reputation for doing things correctly, and they know that you can produce a document like this, and they know that you can validate and testify specifically to the storage conditions that your evidence is stored under, they're going to leave you alone because it's not going to look good for them in court when they're questioning your practices and your processes when you can just lay it out there for them that you're spot on when it comes to evidence storage environment and storage custody and all those fun things. So um, I definitely want to talk about something that, like for me, where this is a game changer, and we didn't have time to show you all the little storage devices and thingies, and they do have technical names that I don't know, but we all know temperature is important, right? Temperature is important in ambient temperature is important in temperature controlled environments between 60 and 75 degrees. When it exceeds that tolerance, we need to know about it. And I think one of the resistances to this kind of new emerging technology is, well, if our temperature goes to 76, and the defense attorneys are going to try to attack us every time. No, that's not going to happen. You are going to exceed tolerances sometimes, but it's better to be able to testify we knew the correct storage environment for these items. We got an alert that these storage item that this tolerance was being exceeded. We responded immediately. Here's what we did. That shuts people up because you are transparent about your storage environment. You're transparent about the fact that you're aware of the storage conditions and you acted appropriately to take corrective measures. 60 to 75 is important, but there are also things in the NIST guidelines standbook that talk about temporary evidence storage conditions where you can exceed those conditions for a temporary period of time, and it's not catastrophic. It's all about documentation, measurement, and knowledge. But it's this type of stuff like when you take one of our classes or when we do an audit project, air quality is a huge issue. Volatile organics inside of an evidence vault. Those are not good for you. They have monitors that can monitor tolerance levels for volatile organics or combustibles, different flammable chemical, volatile chemical levels. They can monitor all that fun stuff. In a drug vault, they have monitors that can verify and measure ventilation, changes per hour within your drug vault. So lots of fun stuff that they can do. The water leaks to me was amazing, was a game changer. Uh, Even the unsecured doors, basically, they can they can really build a portrait of your agency's storage conditions and your storage environment in a way that I hadn't seen before. So to me, that was a cool find, and I would encourage you to check them out. Um, I don't think we put Jim's contact information out there, but reach out to me. I'll get you to Jim or someone from Sonicu. If you have any questions about the technology or about how this could be applied, or I mean, if you've been doing this job for a very long time, I think you can see the applications are limitless. And if you disagree with me that this is not something that should be in every vault, I'd love to hear the objections. I mean, I like to argue, and I think it would be fun. But if you have questions for Jim or questions about 363 chain of custody, go ahead and type them in the little box. I will say, Jim, we don't get a lot of questions, but sometimes we do, and we'll be available if they have any. Anyone? Bueller? Our mic was very quiet. Was that my mic or was that Jim's mic? Maybe because I'm not talking into the mic. So for the
And
last,
thanks, Sean. I do want to comment on what you said at the end there, and I appreciate that tremendously. Even amongst, and there are a few other cloud-based monitoring systems out there, even amongst those, one of the things that has differentiated us is the breadth and depth of what we monitor. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It's not just temperature, it's not just ambient room conditions. We have kits that can tie in to third-party sensors of any kind. So I do think that's a little bit different than some of the other stuff that's out there.
yeah, I mean, I just think there's so many applications, so many useful applications. I don't think there are any questions unless the question button is broken. Um, but I think probably because we so thoroughly covered the topic and in such depth and detail that there were no questions to be asked because we've honestly answered them all. But if you do have other questions or you want to reach out and find out more about Sonicu, reach out to Jim through me. Um, I would type the little thing in there, but I'm not that fast on the fly. Uh, should have thought about that earlier. Thank y'all for being here. We'll be back. Oh, wait, let me fast forward because I got another slide or two, and I want to get as much mileage out of these as possible. Uh, Something really cool. July 27th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Central. That will be our next broadcast episode. So reach out there. And if you hadn't already figured it out, something cool probably means that we don't know what we're going to talk about that month. But it will be something cool. I promise you, because we just said it was going to be cool. Uh, Future four season dates. I did not check the calendar. Probably sometime in August we'll do one. Maybe not in September. We're going to be on the road so much in September. We'll be at Nippet. We'll be in Florida. We'll be in another place, and where is it? Oh, Georgia. So unless we're doing it from the road, we will maybe we'll do it from the road. So that's an option. All right. Thank y'all for being here. We're not going to beleaguer or belabor the point. Thank you for paying attention. Reach out if you got questions. Um, again, thanks for tuning in and holler if you need anything. All right. Have a great day.